Hey everyone, welcome to the Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and today I have the lovely Rebecca Blevins with me. She is doing some very powerful work. She is a intimate partner betrayal trauma coach and survivor. And through her experience, she and her husband created Oak Mountain Coaching, and we're here today just to talk about her journey. So, welcome, Rebecca. Thank you for saying yes to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is so great to be able to connect with you and learn a little more about your journey. So, why don't you kind of tell me the inception point of this incredible growth journey that you've been on? You know, we all go through these different life experiences that kind of shake us to our core. And they're so
Yeah.
difficult. But if we can navigate through, something really beautiful comes out of it.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
maybe we can just start with your story, how you got here.
Yeah. Well, I think 2020 hit a lot of people, differently, and it was. I could probably talk forever about this, so I'll try and keep it short. But but so my whole life I just kind of felt like something was not right, and it was like I was always fighting against what I saw other people doing, and you get these voices, or I don't know, the conditioning to just to do the right thing, to be the right person, to look the right way, and
Yeah.
all of that just felt like wrong to me. It's like, why do I have to be the size of a person that is an adolescent? Like, why is this an expectation that I didn't never age? Or like, oh, but so I think my whole life I always felt like there was something not right. And so 2020 hit, and I discovered my husband was addicted to pornography and had been our whole marriage. At that point it was 27 years. And I think, but I was just at this point where I was just done with him and done with the marriage. I'm like, I don't care that I love you. I don't care. You're killing me, basically.
Right.
And so, of course, he entered therapy, and he's like, my therapist has a betrayal trauma therapist that they recommend you see. And I met her, and she really changed my life. Like, she helped me because she's a survivor herself. She helped me realize. She just offered a space of validation and safety. And I couldn't keep her with me every day, all day. And I really needed that support in the beginning. I think, in the beginning, you're kind of in this crisis mode, not kind of, you
Mm.
are absolutely in crisis. So I'm such a curious person. And so I love to just learn. And I'm like, she gave me the name of what I was experiencing. And I just went with that information and I ran. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like PTSD, but it's not PTSD, but it kind of is. And so because betrayal trauma is kind of new in the world of psychology. But I tried to learn everything I could about betrayal trauma just to be able to help myself. And there were days like in the beginning, you're fetal on the floor. You're like, I cannot survive this pain. And like I learned, that our nervous system and our body, we're biologically wired to connect to other people. And it is when we feel like there is some kind of relational rupture, we do feel like we're going to die. And so just understanding that, I was like, it normalized my experience. And so the more I learned, the more I was able to kind of shed all of these old narratives or all these old voices. And I think healing, as you know, when we kind of talked about this a little, we're always healing. We're always kind of growing. We're always kind of learning and shedding old patterns, old narratives. And I get so excited talking about this. So if you need to interrupt me, please do. But it was just, you know, it was just so enlightening to learn that this, that there are systems in place that kind of keep us stuck in these patterns, and that there are systems that benefit from us being submissive and, inferior. And that just didn't jive with me. And it was just kind of like, I knew it. I knew that what I was feeling my whole life growing up was wrong, and it was just kind of like an awakening almost. I tell my clients, I'm like, we kind of just have to unplug from the matrix. I don't know if that's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think
it's
it's
like,
so difficult because in order to own and claim ourselves, to heal, to emerge, to embrace our unique gifts, talents, power, it
mhm,
requires us to break the shackles of our programming. And when you do that, when you have the courage to do that, and usually it's coming on the aftermath of a breakdown or an emotional trauma or a huge life crisis event, because we need something that powerful to shake us awake, shake us out of this complacency and this um, program that we are so deeply immersed in that we don't, if we are in tune, intuitive, empathic, there's always that voice, and you just know
mhm,
there's something more out there for me to be doing, or there's something more to me. And we allow that program to shackle us. And one of my favorite quotes from a friend of mine is, "You don't know you're chained until you move."
yes.
And it sounds like that was the moment,
Mhm,
right? That you realized how much you had been tethered to this program and it was time.
mhm. It was very much time for me. And I'm grateful because I know that, a lot of people don't have a partner that joins them in that healing journey. And I feel like, a lot of healing can happen in community. Like just being in community with you is healing for me. And so I feel grateful that my partner was just as curious and just as dedicated to getting that healing that I was, and so, and he's very, uh, it's just a different world now for us both, and so we're very
It's
grateful that we
it's
can.
beautiful that you were able to come together in that way and grow together. There's a beauty in rebirth
Yeah.
after blowing everything apart.
Hmm.
But what courage it took for him to
Hmm.
be vulnerable and embark on this with you as
Yes.
partners. I think that is truly such a gift because that's not always the case for
Mhm.
survivors of this kind of trauma, right? I'm just so happy that your family probably grew and into a healthy version of what it always could have been, right? And that must feel so good for you.
It does. It feels like a blessing. I know, um, or divinely guided. I don't, whichever way you want to say it. Like we talk about, we don't live in that house anymore. It's like the house is the same, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't live in that house anymore. And so whenever, the kids are, I have two adult children, but one lives home at home and the other doesn't. But they're both non-binary, so
Okay.
I use they. I use they. But so whenever something happens or comes up, they're like, "Oh no," and I'm like, "No, no, we don't live at that house anymore. It's okay. It's okay to
Mm-hmm.
feel what you feel. It's okay if you're late. It's okay." Like just offering, and trying to break that cycle that we were created with them, and so, and they love that they like that they can say, "We don't live in that house anymore, do we?" And I'm like, "Nope, we don't live there
I
anymore."
love that phrase. And I think that is such a useful tool for people who are transitioning out of trauma or healing trauma within themselves. Because as we were speaking of before we got onto the recording, we were talking about how, we are losing aspects of ourselves as we are healing. And sometimes those goodbyes are very painful. And there's so much processing of who we were in our patterns that we have to navigate to come to the next level of healing. I was wondering if you could share what that was like for you, just kind of observing and processing and letting go of aspects of yourself, of the old Rebecca, as you navigated forward. What was that like for you?
Honestly, I think it was part for me. I realized I was grieving a lot because I was so angry
Mm.
at the conditioning that I was following, like to be the perfect person, like to be, the mask. We talk about wearing the mask of like, you can't allow anyone to know that you're struggling because God is good. Like you have to just be this perfect,
Right.
like, or just like in so I was angry. I was so angry at the conditioning. I still have anger. I'm still processing that anger of like, who does that benefit? And that's one of the things I love to ask my clients. I'm like, okay, so who does that narrative, who does that benefit? So let's kind of explore that. And so I apply that to most of my life now. It's like, okay, that doesn't benefit me. And so just walking through all the steps of kind of grief. But I think anger was like the number one thing because I was just like, I was kind of raised that anger was a sin. So never, like anger was never allowed. It was like an emotion that was so repressed for me. And
Our
so
culture
just,
just forces us to really suppress
mhm.
our true nature, our true feelings, our true essence of who we are. It's so stifling. It's really, really powerful to navigate those spaces and also get to a place of acceptance of who we have been and what we have done to suppress our true nature and accept it, right? And that must have been a real powerful moment for you. What was it like to finally kind of come to terms with who you were and move through the grieving and then really embrace this path of being in service to others and being able to help them through your experience because nothing is wasted, right?
No, no. I think it's learning to I may have been a post that I did yesterday. It was talking about, learning to hold regret tenderly. And I did the best that I could at the time, and so I think it's learning to be compassionate with the tools that I had. I talk about that a lot with my clients. It's like we can blame our parents, but have the tools, you know, and so it's like they didn't have the tools. So I didn't have the tools. So I'm going to extend that same compassion for myself. It's like I did the best that I could for what I knew and for what I was taught. And, it it's okay. And and when you look at it, like in the same with how we look at addictions, it's like those addictions, they serve a purpose. And so when you can find the purpose, you can kind of navigate your way out of them, but you also kind of have to have compassion for what kept you alive at this point. And maybe that addiction has kept you alive.
Sometimes it's just survival, and we do
Yeah,
what we need to do to survive, honestly.
exactly.
And
Exactly. Not that they're good, but
in the moment when you're going through something really difficult,
Mhm.
it's sometimes a moment to moment experience because the pain is so great. And everyone has a varying degree of stress tolerance.
Yes.
So for some people, they have a huge container of stress tolerance and can really sit through the pain and feel the burn. They can walk through that fire and feel the burn and they can keep walking. And there are others who just get singed and then they break down because their container for stress tolerance is so tiny, and
Hmm.
there's such a spectrum, right? And so, do you feel like your role is to help people expand that container of stress tolerance and kind of, you know, be able to hold themselves with compassion, teach them how to hold themselves with compassion? Is that a big part of your work, would you say?
It is. It is because most people in intimate betrayal or partner betrayal, we blame ourselves.
Mhm.
Like we're like, oh, if I would have had, you know, if I would have been skinnier, if I would have been taller,
Yeah.
if I would have been all of these things, we kind of blame ourselves. So um, having the I like to walk them through like, no, we were kind of like as women, we're we're almost set up to fail in this kind of society. And so, I try to walk them through, you know, that place of, okay, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do this. I'm not to blame because we blame ourselves. So it's working on that part of it, but also yes, the compassion part, because we blame ourselves. There's no compassion in that blame, right?
Also, I feel like worthiness is a big piece of it. We
Mhm.
have to feel worthy within ourselves because when we're in that space of unworthiness, it seems like we make choices that are codependent and we do too much and we hold back and we don't honor and nurture ourselves because we don't feel worthy of it. Then I can remember how alone I felt in those darkest spaces, especially I imagine something so intimate for you and in personal, like you must have felt so alone, and what was one of the tools that helped move you through that grief and solitude that you felt? um,
Yes. It- I will try and answer that, but I would like to speak on that just a little bit because I think, we talk about the disenfranchisement of grief, that betrayal trauma, that we have with that. And it is, I think it's one of the hardest things because you are so alone. If someone dies, people grieve publicly with you. They support you. They bring
mm,
you meals. They hug you. They love you. They send flowers. They send cards. But when you find out that your partner's been betraying you, you don't publicize that. You can't reach out for help because for various reasons, you don't want people to judge you. You don't want people to judge him, whatever it
yeah,
is. And so that isolation, it's one of the hardest parts. It's one of the most painful parts of recovery because can't you can't be out loud about your grief. You can't be. I mean, it was scary for me to even tell my best friend in the beginning because I thought they would judge me or say, "Why are you still with him?" And at that point, you don't need more blame because you're already blaming yourself. And so, um, that's what I try to do is like I'm a safe place for people to come to say, hey, this has happened. What do I do? Where do I go from here? Because and I think that was one of the most important parts of becoming a betrayal trauma coach was I never wanted another person to feel as alone as I did in that space. I'm like, I'm here. If, you know, if you just need to email me, text me, I'm here. Please don't ever
yeah,
feel that alone. You've got
yeah.
a friend over here,
One
Let
person, one safe person to hold space is so critical.
it is.
To hold your hand and just know that you can share everything on your heart in a safe space. That is so beautiful. You're able to offer that to people who are going through the same thing you've been through. So I really honor your work. I really honor the work you and your husband have done as a couple. Because when you come through something like that, you're so much stronger.
Mhm.
You're so much stronger together because it forces so much communication and all the things that an actual true partnership and relationship need for a foundation. So even after being married so long, um, tell me how you feel together now after having navigated through all of these stages of grief and emotion and you just all of it. I just honor both of you for having the courage to take the steps. And what has it been like for your family, for you both to emerge in a healthier place?
I, it's been life changing because I don't think my husband or I, neither one of us knew that life could be different. We didn't know that, like we talked about unplugging from the matrix. It's like we
Mhm.
didn't know that there was another way of living and being in this place of authenticity. Like I I don't know. I don't know if it was, I forget who it was who said it, so forgive me, but they said you have to have a PhD in your partner if you want to make it work. And so knowing that I can go to him and say, "Hey, I'm upset about this," or "This makes me feel this way," and he's a safe container for that now. It's so different, and that we can offer that to our children.
Right.
And yeah, it's instead of, this, well, you just need to do better, or you need to try harder, or you need to, and instead it's more about that exploration of feeling. Like, what is it making you feel? Oh, that makes sense that this makes you feel this because what you've experienced in your life, because we know these things about each other, we can be that safe place for each other. And
Oh,
yeah, it's it's kind of surreal sometimes when I think about where we were and where we are now. It's like, am I going to wake up from this? You know?
is this a dream?
Yeah, like, am I going to, but
Communication is so important.
mm,
Communication, integrity, honesty. And if you can work through the traumas in your life, and so many people still have that mask on and that armor, and they're like, I'm fine. I'm not the problem. You're the problem. And if
for
you're in that
sure.
on the receiving end of that narrative and you believe it for decades, think of the psychological impact on you and how small you become
Yes.
because you start out like this as a child, right? Wide open, authentic and true to yourself. The world is your oyster. Children don't overthink things. They just are living in the moment.
Yes.
And I think we owe it to ourselves to return to that aspect of ourselves where we can just fully express and feel safe about it and invite in a community and people and a lifestyle that supports us being exactly that.
Yes.
Tell me what it's felt like to be able to really reconnect to your true essence and live life from that place versus the program that you were in. Did you notice a specific time when you were shifting that all of a sudden you're like, I don't need, we don't need to live in that world anymore, to quote you?
Yeah. I think it happened little by little. It's just kind of like the onion peeling. It's like there's so many
Yeah.
different layers. So I can't
Yeah.
pinpoint like a specific time, but I do know a lot of the ways, we talk about those developmental traumas and how we try to outrun those traumas and seek the validation that we didn't get as children, or try to undo the wounds that we had as children. And for me, it was always you know, um, appearances. Like I had to be perfectly put together, perfectly on time, perfectly, just whatever at my job, employee of the year, like all of these things that, when you run the race and you try and you do and you achieve, but then at the end of the day, you're still just that same wound, like you were just walking wounded. And so I think it was just little by little. I'm like, oh, I don't need that. Oh, I don't need that. It's like even um, just being almost 50. I'll be 50 this year. And so it's like,
Oh,
I don't need, I can allow my hair to be the color that it is.
mhm.
I can allow my frown lines to show. I can. I don't have to be this person. So I think when I love sociology, so looking at all the symbols and the things we use to identify ourselves, it's called symbolic interactionism. And I'm just like, I don't need all these symbols. I don't need the car. I don't need the house. I don't need those things to be happy. And so it's like the more you shed those onion layers, the more you come back to like, but what do I need? I love art. I love reading. I love music. I love these things. These things bring me joy. And so that's where I devote my time. I love learning. So that's where,
And the more you do it, the more organic it becomes, and the more it fuels your soul, and the more you are nurturing without really even realizing you're nurturing yourself, right? You're just watering and fertilizing your garden with things that you love.
yes, yes,
Something
for sure.
happens over time. You just start to
Mhm.
bloom because you are actually watering your own garden. You're filling your soul. And people think healing is so complicated and it's going to be so hard, and it is, right? But at the same time, you know who you are deep down. So it's really almost like a remembering
Yes.
because you're in
And
there.
home.
You're in
Yeah.
there, and home is inside of you. And it just sometimes needs a little extra attention or an intimacy coach and guide like you are, a, a book, a podcast, or whatever to remind you that you're still in there and you're not lost. It's
Right.
just about shedding those
Mhm.
external programs. And I don't know if you found this, but for me, I found that the more true to myself I became, I thought people would be very excited for me that I was healing, but I got so much resistance and so much pushback because people were comfortable with me playing that role. The
Mm.
people who benefited the most from me people pleasing were not happy about me coming forward and saying, that's not mine to hold. You need to hold that. That's not my role. You need, just giving everybody back energetically what wasn't mine to carry or be or represent. And I think there's something really powerful that you and your husband were able to journey together
Mhm.
and be there for each other through the process. It's
Yes.
powerful.
I agree. But like you, it's been also kind of isolating as well because, people that are kind of still in those patterns, like you said, they benefit from us being wounded and they benefit from us being, in this space of trying harder and praying harder and doing all the
Yeah.
things that, get us to the self-actualization that's really not self-actualization at
No, it's
all.
self-actualization by their standards. And I found that, you just keep, this is a one-way ticket, personal growth and, you know, soul searching is a one-way ticket. You don't go backwards. The more you grow, it's like a quantum experience. Then you just keep going and you keep going, and it's so freeing. You're not willing to go back in that box anymore. So that's where the grief comes, right? Because you do lose people along the way.
You do, for sure. And I know, like we were talking earlier, it's sad, but it's also kind of, to me, it's like a marker of being able to look back and think of the old ways that I lived my life that no longer serve me. And like I want so badly for, I have friendships that are kind of outrun their course. And we were talking about that earlier, but
Yeah.
I just want so badly to go, come up here and join me. It's so different. It's so
Yes.
nice, and
Yes.
but people will journey on their own path as, you know,
Yeah.
I think.
People don't know what you don't know until
Don't.
you know it. And so it's really hard until you get to this other side and you experience this kind of freedom to really explain to someone. And like I was saying, people don't realize they're chained until they move.
Yes.
If they don't move, they don't realize they're chained. They don't realize they're in a bind. They're bound to this false matrix or expectation. if you are always right there next to that peg holding your chain, you'll never know that you're chained. You feel free, but you don't
Mhm.
really know true freedom until you do this deep soul work and
Yes.
set yourself free. And you're like, oh my gosh,
Wow.
this is incredible. You're like, come join me. It's so good up here. And people are like, no, no, I'm good.
Yes.
There's a comfort in the discomfort.
There is. It's the
Right?
familiarity of, and I love that because we talk about nervous system regulation a lot, and our nervous system will choose a familiar hell over a unknown,
I
comfortable
mean,
or unknown, unfamiliar
right.
piece.
That's why
Yeah.
people stay in abusive relationships.
Hmm.
It's known, you know what you're going to get,
Hmm.
and you do buy into that false belief. And I did that. What you had spoke of earlier. If I was just a better mother, if I just looked better, if I just cooked better meals, if I was just better, because everything that's happening is because of a failure on my part. That's a heavy cross to bear, and I think a lot of women bear it, and we bear it well because we're strong. The
Hmm.
stronger we are, the more we can take. And that is why I believe you and I and probably many other women had to get to something that rocked our world so hard and forced a hard stop for us and breakdown for us to really break through and actually confront ourselves and shake ourselves and say, what are you doing? This isn't who you are, you know?
Right, right. But how scary was that in the beginning of thinking that who you are in this current state is not good enough? What about the who you are if you navigate through? Is she going to be good enough? That was one of my fears. I'm like, will I always feel this lack, this that I am the problem? And I think it's the more
Yes.
you learn and the more you realize that as a child, you internalize so much as your
So
fault.
much. And I've found in every case with my clients, it goes back to childhood.
Always.
It goes back to childhood trauma. We have all had it.
Mhm.
Every single person has experienced childhood trauma
Mhm.
because, we're only a couple generations out where seeking therapy and mental health has become a topic that's accepted in
Yeah.
society, that we can actually openly speak of it. In
Mhm.
our parents' generation, you did
Mhm.
not go to therapy. You filled a void with something. And
Mhm.
so, no coping skills or emotional safety or nurturing was taught to them,
No.
and they were unable to give it to us. We have the courage to break those ancestral patterns. And all I can say is, I honor you for having the courage
Thank you.
to reclaim yourself.
Thank you. I honor you. I know that, our paths are so similar.
Yes, they
You're
really
doing such
are.
amazing work. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, to fully embody yourself, your authentic self and your power can be really intimidating.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
it takes a tremendous amount of courage and faith in your
Mhm.
process, in yourself, in your journey, and just
Right.
trust, who am I
Yes.
becoming? What am I becoming? What am I
Mhm.
doing with my life? You go through these you go through these existential crises sometimes, and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I? Especially right before you seem to level up, I find that that's when I start to really, because everything goes quiet. You're about to do
Yes.
something you've never done before. Like for you, opening Oak Mountain Coaching, that was a bold move. Tell me a little bit about what you were feeling right before you decided to embark on that journey.
I honestly was just fear. The
Yeah.
only bad part I would say was the fear, but there was just so much excitement over being in a place where we could help other people.
Yeah.
Because my husband works with men who are suffering from, sexual addictions, process addictions, those kind of things, and I work with their partners, and so we were so excited about that part, but the fear of what are our friends going to think when they find out, we left private practice and we left,
Hmm. Hmm.
university life and
Socially acceptable and safe
jobs. Yes.
careers, right? What's the
So
response been like for the work you guys are doing?
it's really good. It's hard. People, we talk about people don't really want to talk about that they see you because they want people to know that they see. But
Right.
but I think it's such an honor to be able to just sit in that space with someone and to be a safe container because I know what that's like to feel so alone. And I had such an amazing safe container for my pain.
Yes.
And so she inspired me so much to do this work. And so I'm like, of course, I'll get choked up, but it's such an honor.
And to know that person changed your life,
Oh, absolutely.
changed the trajectory of your life. Like,
Absolutely.
who could have seen this direction coming? But this is exactly who you were born to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And we forget when we're in that suffering part that this is a stepping stone to our greatness. This is a stepping stone leading us exactly where we need to be. It's not a failure. I'm like, this is just where I am right here, right
Right.
now. And it's okay. And I need to be
Mhm.
right here, right now. Whether it's in a space of vulnerability or
Mhm.
fear or, whatever it is, there's this unknown, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be potential, possibility, excitement. It can be joy. It can be love. It can be potentials
Yes.
versus like fear.
Yes.
It's so
Yes.
crippling, right?
It is. It is. And so that's like for a coach, my job is to investigate or help you investigate your relationship with that fear. And like, let's investigate that. What is that fear trying to protect you from? And
Right.
so because I have to do it for myself sometimes daily, when you're in this liminal space of like
Yeah.
I'm not quite there, but I'm not quite here, It's so it's being able to investigate what is it that's keeping me from being there, and is this just my moment of rest? And it's okay if it is, you know.
Curiosity is such a huge piece of it.
Hmm.
Curiosity about ourselves and our patterns. Why am I doing this?
Yes.
What is this about? Like asking ourselves questions opens the door, right? Just curiosity without judgment, just to be like, why am I a perfectionist?
Yes.
That was an old program for me. I'm killing myself here. Nobody cares if the house is perfect or if I made chicken cacciatore for dinner. Nobody cares. I'm working myself to the bone and I'm doing it to myself. Like the revelation was like, just put it all down, get takeout tonight. It's okay.
Are you fed? It's like, and I think
Yeah.
it is so hard to just kind of shed that. That's part of the onion of like, nobody
Yes.
cares. And if they do, they're not my people. If they're
Right.
going to judge me for that, they aren't
Right.
my people. So
Yes. Yes. Tell me the impacts on your family. How have people responded to you being so beautifully open and embracing this noble work? What has been the response from, family members? Have they just been like, "Ooh, that seems that seems like, I don't know, an interesting choice." I mean, have you had any pushback, or have people just been like, "Yeah, the work you're doing is so incredible," or both?
it's both. It's both like, but mainly it's the people that are excited. They're like, oh my gosh, of course you were meant to do this. Like I love that
Yes.
kind of support.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, a few people are like, you know, they don't really kind of, and I think those are just the people that really we kind of lose along our healing journey. And so it's like you grieve it, you mourn it, and you just, kind of, you know, realize what it is and realize where they are and where you are. And not in a place of judgment, but it's like, okay, I can understand why this wouldn't be comfortable for you.
Right. Right. Acceptance of people's journeys is really, really a powerful thing, right? To be able to just say, I understand and
Yeah.
it's okay.
Hmm.
It's still, I'm just surprised how much grief we navigate, though, on the journey. It seems like there's so much loss as you're healing. You just lose so much. You grieve yourself, aspects of yourself that have died off. You grieve so many things, friendships, you grieve so many things. You have to have such, in that container, you have to have such a big container for stress tolerance to navigate it. Sometimes it just slowly grows over time. You just keep going back in the fire and you can go a little further and go a little further until finally you're like, oh my gosh, I can
Mhm.
actually sometimes that one last time that thing circles back around to show you that you've actually mastered that. Like, why
Mhm.
is this showing up again? In
Right.
my life.
Right.
And you're like, wow, I handled that so beautifully. Whereas
Mhm.
before,
Like
maybe it would
it's
have taken you down, right?
yes, for sure. For sure. I think that's, two things there for me is that um I don't think anybody prepares you for how often you have to grieve the living. It's like we do
True
that all the time.
statement. True
Yeah.
statement. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and window of tolerance, I think Dr. Dan Siegel calls it window of tolerance, with Dr. Lawrence Hellery calls it expansion and contraction. Either way, it's learning to tolerate a little bit more of the uncomfortable feelings that we've been avoiding our whole lives and 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 being able to sit with those feelings and not outrun them, not try to outdrink them or outshop them or outsex them, like whatever
Can't.
it is. It's like
You cannot, right? You cannot
no, no.
ever outrun yourself because there you are every time at the
Yep.
end of the day, right?
Yes.
Tell me
Yes.
what you've learned about yourself. I mean, you have done such tremendous work and you've been so, I know you've been so influential in so many people that you've helped. But tell me what you've learned about yourself on this journey.
Oh, um, I am smart.
Yes.
Like it's just I think for me it was identifying the negative core beliefs and then realizing that those served me, those negative core beliefs served me for a while, but no, I am smart. I am brave. I do deserve good things. And so it's
Yeah.
like just it's countering all that I thought was wrong with me with what is right about me. And so like there's a list of things and my husband has it like written on his phone and he'll
Oh,
read them to me every now and then. He's
oh,
like, "You are brave, you are smart,
oh
you
my
are."
gosh. You just made my heart like crack open. Wow. To be seen like that by your partner is such a gift.
Mhm.
Such a gift. I love that you were both able to navigate this right into your purpose, your power and purpose individually and as a couple to be able to offer safe containers for two halves of the whole and then be able to integrate them and bring them together is such a beautiful thing. I love that you guys offer this. And I hope somebody finds you through our podcast today that says, oh my gosh, I'm sure you work. Do you work remotely too, like on Zoom, or are you mostly in person?
We do both. We have in person and Zoom. So most of our clients are out of state, but Canadian clients, like it's just
Yeah.
all
So, what
local.
is your website so that people can find you?
Oh, oakmountaincoaching.com.
That's so perfect. And what advice would you give someone who's kind of in the darkest space of discovery of betrayal and just really broken? Like, what is some advice you could give them on next steps or how to sit in the pain of that?
Yeah. I think we don't really have a choice. It is such a painful thing. And so just understanding you don't have a choice. You're not crazy. That was one of the most important things my therapist said to me on my first session was like, you're not crazy. I know you feel crazy, but you're not crazy. You're not alone. There's like a whole community of people that want to help you. Um, you are loved, you are enough, like all of those things you're
Yeah,
questioning about yourself, they're not true. It's not your fault. There is help, there's a community. And so, reach out to somebody, anybody, that is partner trained and partner sensitive that can help you, and life doesn't have to be this way, and that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Sometimes you just have to get through the moment and breathe.
Hmm.
There were moments in my suffering where I just had to, all I could do was cry and breathe through the pain
Yes,
and allow it to just take as long as it takes.
right. But I think we're so conditioned to that get rich quick, get.
Or
Right,
fix
right, for
it. We
sure.
got to
For
fix
sure.
it, fix this and move on, fix it and move on. And there are some things that you can't just fix and move on. You're really going to have to go deep, dark,
Yes.
because the healing comes in layers. I didn't know that at first. I was like, I got this. And I literally just picked the scab off the top of the issue and like, oh, that was actually 5 years of work that was ahead of me. I didn't know.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, I got this. I checked that box. In the beginning, you're just trying to check the boxes and move through it as fast as possible. And then I was like,
Yeah.
nope, nope, that one's gonna be a while. It took years,
Yes.
to unpack.
Well, yes, but I think so. The thing that I usually encounter, and I had the same struggle myself, was the unfairness of getting help for finding out that you were betrayed, but then realizing that you kind of have to work on yourself. You're like, how is this fair?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. How is this
And
my fault? Like, what? Why do I have to do the work, right?
it's like, oh, it's not your fault at all. But where it hits you in your negative
Mm,
core wounds, that's the work we're going to do together. And that's where you're going to see change, and you're going to see this
yeah,
strength and this beautiful energy come from yourself that you didn't know that you had, or that has been stifled.
totally. I understand that so perfectly, and I'm getting this image of like the lotus flower. The lotus flower starts so deep into the muddy water. It is just in the mud, literally.
Yes.
And then in its own timing and
Mhm.
in the right conditions, it just blooms into the most gorgeous thing. And I'm reminded of that often when I feel like I'm in the mud and you just
Absolutely.
feel paused and buried and
Yes.
you're suffering a little bit. It's just so important to go into the self love and know that, no, I'm going to bloom from this.
Yes. Yes. What a
Yeah.
beautiful representation that nature gave us of
Yeah.
post-traumatic growth.
Totally. Totally. Well, we're just about out of time, Rebecca. It went so quick, but do you have any maybe parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with people who are maybe going through something really difficult? Do you have anything you could share to help them?
I think it's just that same thing that we talked about earlier. It's just it's okay to be in this pain, but there will be a time where you can come from this pain and maybe be on this side of it where you can share your story and say, you know what, I made it through, because you're going to make it through. And I'm very proud of you for even trying. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes we find power and purpose through the pain
yes,
on the other
for sure.
side. And I do know that if we could do it, anyone out there can do it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think you're amazing. So I appreciate this opportunity with you.
Oh, it was so beautiful having you. Thank you so much for being here and saying yes to the podcast. And to all you beauties out there who have joined us today, I hope you guys remember to love yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and have a beautiful day. We'll see you next time. Bye.